Crest of Crystal. Written and narrated by Steve Grenfell. Prologue. Before time began, there was the creation of 3 swords of great power. The first was a double-edged sword made entirely of a glowing, translucent blue crystal. It rivaled the length of a greatsword, but its width could mistake it for a claymore. The blade itself was both symmetrical and asymmetrical, its chaos preferring to be on the subtle side. It would be named Indalskaber, dubbed the Sword of Creation for its seeming potential to hold anything within its cleavage, as well as its involvement in the creation of the world as we know it. The second was a chaotic mess in both make and design. Its single edge, if you could consider it single, was serrated in a way that could tear even the sturdiest steel to ribbons if not wielded correctly. This greatsword had little balance in its seeming multitude of handles upon its hilt, opting for a more destructive swing. As primed to destroy as it was designed, it was given the ability to destroy anything its wielder so chose, and so the name Nevlabir was fitting for this newly dubbed Sword of Destruction. The third and final sword was not as obvious as its brothers, as the only physical attributes that could be held were its handle, hilt, and pommel, of which looked to be made from a mystical wood. From the guard, however, erupted an ethereal green light. This would act as the blade, of which appeared as a single curved edge. Its glowing and selectively tangible blade restored itself whenever it be needed, and so was given the name Sylvamus, provided an unmatched healing ability to fit the title of Sword of Restoration. These swords would be the cornerstones of a primal world of pure duality, as this world, still in its infancy, kept a delicate balance. Half of the world became a kingdom of pure light, dubbed Solus, and the other, an empire of shadow named Nocturnum, with a stone construct in the center of this ecliptic continent. Thus, the Twilight Cornerstone, as would be known, was a series of stone arches that, while simple, displayed the delicate balance that was at play between the halves of the continent. If one stone was moved out of place, it would spell the end of the peace between the nations. And yet, one being dared to disturb this peace, even if accidentally. A foolish human named Atromitus, who resided in the Kingdom of Light, in a drunken stupor, leveled the monument in a simple motion. And in that same motion, as witnessed by both members of Light and Dark, he issued a war that would last decades, if not centuries. Unfortunately, this war was helmed by the monsters sealed from a time even before Solus, Nocturnum, and the Twilight Cornerstone's existence. However, there was one thing the fool did manage to get correct, that these dark phantoms hailed from a time that seemed long past. And these grisly creatures were the harbingers of the first war in existence. Decades turned to centuries, then to millennia of war, and the tension would not let up for anything. That was, until the swords appeared. Sylvamus came to be carried by a great healer, Nevlabir to a soul purer than snow. Indalskaber, however, was a tricky one. It was rather particular about its wielder, carrying standards unknown, even to the oldest of the lore keepers in the capital's great library. Whenever someone unworthy even grazed its crystalline hilt, it would burst back with a force unlike any magic the people would know of before or since. Eventually, the sword eroded to naught but a simple rusted longsword, neglected by the world, seeing it as but a simple monument and nothing more. At least, That was the case for 5 years. One day, a young human saw the sword and curiously went to retrieve it. Despite several protests, she was able to release it from its stony prison, and soon revealed itself as the last of the sacred swords. And the kingdom had found its third and final lead protector of the realm. When the time came for the assault on the Land of Shadows, the 3 sword-bearers led the charge. Nevlabir defended equal to the amount of destruction it left in its wake. Silvamus's blade, being ethereal, had quite the easy time dispatching foes, as well as healing and even restoring the vitality of those fallen in battle. Indalskaber was the more chaotic, however, creating just as much confusion and mess in its wake as its slain. The greatest test for the 3 sword-bearers would be within the towering keep at the heart of Noctinum, the black-hearted ruler of the Land of Darkness itself. He was an imposing figure, clad in armor crafted from the very fabric of the darkest void itself, cloaked in midnight, and when he stood, the very shadows themselves rose up alongside him. The sole exception was that his eyes glowed an eerie blue. When the heroic sword-bearers rose to strike him down, he surprised them all with an army of 100 soldiers darker than the new moon, and his own sword, the terrifying Shade Hex, forged in the blackest fire and enchanted with dark magic so old and evil none dare speak its tongue without purpose. The single black edge could easily cut through any defense the bearers could muster, raise the Dark Lord's personal forces back from the brink of death, and nearly brought the heroic swordsmen to their knees. Suddenly, Indalskaber's wielder devised a plan to hopefully eradicate the Dark Lord for eternity by combining the 3 swords' powers in one concentrated strike. And when the strike landed, it shattered Shade Hex into several pieces, eliminated the darkened army completely, and even affected the Dark Lord of Noctinum. However, it came at a cost. It left the 3 heroes weak, giving up most of their collective strength to form the strike itself, and while the Emperor of Shadow was deathly weakened, his power was formed in such a manner that he couldn't truly die. As such, the wielder of Indalskaber cast a nigh unbreakable seal on Noctinum's sole ruler to his keep, so that no soul alive, dead, or any in between could allow him to exit his own home. A curse that was simple in its wording, but held more weight than could possibly be imagined. Indalskaber's wielder, now dubbed the Knight of Creation by all upon her return to the capital, soon received a terrible vision of the future. Monsters, in the same bloodline as the phantoms she and her fellow knights once did battle against, returning only a year later, armed with the echoes of his comrades' blades, hungry for revenge on the bearer of the crystal claymore. A simple fix, in theory, as it was easy to send Nevlabir and Silvamus to their individual corners of existence, finished with mystic means of sustaining themselves so weakness was not an issue. The trouble was keeping them hidden. Despite liberating the people of Noctinum, severing their previous land from Solus, and providing a new home for the refugees, there were 2 vital consequences to the knight's actions. The first being more immediate, as since her actions brought about the Emperor's end, Indalskaber's essence was made a beacon for the monsters, drawing them in like starving eldritch moths to a primordial flame. The second was a realization. As long as the knight resided in Solus, the wraiths that hunted her would never cease. As such, in a stroke of inspiration, she returned to the stone in which she drew Indalskaber, charged it with its own vast and infinite power, and built a new world around them that would act as a shield. However, during the process, she was interrupted by a beast contracted to destroy both her and the sword. With Indalskaber's push further into the core from whence it emerged, a clash of powers turned into an eruption of white. As it happened, despite the knight's efforts, Indalskaber required more of a push than even she could provide, and as a result, the world to act as Solus's shield, Terra Prime, was born. The immense explosion of light was enough to both disorient the monster as well as cause it to become more berserk. But two things happened when the beast attempted to strike Terra Prime. The first, the infant world shielded itself in a ghostly yet ever-strong shell. From the strike of the creature, its force reverberated, launching its own strike back to its sender. The second is that in the process of Terra Prime's counterattack, it birthed a new world from its spectral membrane, sending the beast back to its point of manifestation. In retaliation, it attempted to destroy that world, only for it to be decimated by a brave warrior native to its target. In time, the monster seemed to dissipate, only for more to swarm the ever-growing omniverse, both sides seemingly locked in an endless stalemate. For countless millennia, the war waged on with no signs of either side waning in strength. That is, however, until worlds within the orbit of Terra Prime showed signs of their realities splitting apart in one way or another. This would, unbeknownst to any force meddling with the fabric of space-time, allow for one darker still to slip through the cracks, creeping through the gaps in the world until at last, that very presence was able to find a breakage in the one place that should not have had any. The Great Barrier guarding Terra Prime. The shield that had held for eons would begin to show wear and tear, and the piece that this world of legend would be most known for would be challenged, and ultimately put to the sword. At least, that is, until the unthinkable would come to pass. Indalskaber, the heart of creation itself, will be removed from its self-made shell.